Alrighty lads, we are back. This time with some Star Wars lore. And you know me, I usually like doing the villains, the Sith Lords. So this time we're going to talk about Exar Kun, one of the most legendary Sith Lords in history, mostly due to the fact of his lightsaber. But we're going to get a little ahead of ourselves here, so let's kind of dial it back. What is this video going to be about? Well, we're going to give a whole little lore excerpt about Exar Kun, covering basically his beginnings to his ends. So you're going to get a little bit of everything. Now that being said, there is going to be a few subtopics I'm going to try briefly cover, but I'm going to try to stick to the main thing of, well, Exar Kun. So, let the story begin. So when it comes to Exar Kun, we start off with him as a Jedi. He had a burning passion to become the greatest Jedi ever. But to do so, he put himself in positions that were far too much. No one really pushed him this hard either. No master told him, oh, he was useless. No Jedi ever said that he would never amount to anything. No, it was a personal drive where he just could not help but keep prowling for knowledge, keep pushing himself, making sure that he was the best warrior that he could possibly be. This is something that his own master, Master Vodo, was kind of pointing out, is that there's some sort of emptiness in his heart where he just cannot stop. He, for whatever reason, won't let any light into him. He won't take solace in the fact that, hey, he's doing pretty damn good for his age. Hey, he's doing pretty damn good in his studies. No. Exar Kun, for some reason, just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And he found that, well, when push comes to shove, Exar Kun was easy to give into his anger. And every single time he gave into his anger, he would win. And this, of course, prompted Exar Kun to do it more frequently. He'd even goad his own sparring partner into anger, questioning her Cathar genetic lineage, typical racist shit that would always spur anger in the Cathar, which, of course, almost got his ass killed, but he unleashed his strength and beat her, which his master whipped out a stick and said, if you're so strong, you should be able to beat me then. If you really think that is the proper way to fight, try to fight me. And he had nothing but a stick, a staff. Yeah, Exar Kun lost. There was no doubt about it. Exar Kun was getting his butt kicked. He couldn't land a blow no matter how angry he got. He couldn't do anything. It was only when he was on his back that he used the Force to grab the Cathar's lightsaber. So now wielding two lightsabers, he just started going a barrage on his master. And it was only then that his master said, yeah, get out of here. You're done. Now, what's interesting here is that before this moment, which kind of prompted this whole spar, this whole clash, was the Master Vodo, caught Exar Kun snooping in Sith holocrons, forbidden knowledge in the Jedi archives, and he even chastised him like, you were not ready for this. You were not strong enough to handle this. To which Exar Kun took it as a personal challenge. So, of course, this spar was the culmination of their previous argument. And, sure enough, Exar Kun saw that he gave in to anger willingly and repeatedly, but he never suffered anything that his master kept warning him about the dark side. So Exar Kun figured he's immune. He's gotta be to the dark side. He's uncorruptible. His master is just ridiculous. His master's unreasonable and is more or less holding him back. Now, during Exar Kun's banishment, no one in the Jedi Order really knew that he was gone. They just knew that he had some sort of issue with his master, but he wasn't actually banished officially. So Exar Kun did what he always did. He dived into forbidden knowledge that he probably shouldn't have been messing with. One of the things that he uncovered from his own Jedi Master's holocron was that there was a Onderonian king, Freedon Nad. Freedon Nad was the previous Sith Lord of this time, and Freedon Nad ruled as a Sith king of this world. So, he went around looking at archaeological dig sites related to Freedon Nad, and he uncovered a lot of Jedi who kept telling him, like, hey, we know you're not allowed here. Why are you saying that you're a Jedi Knight? Upon which he would always disregard them and say, well, if you're not going to help me with my research, I'll just do it myself. And very few Jedi actually confronted Exar Kun, because at the time, Of course, who would think of it? Who would think that this Jedi was fallen? And especially since his master didn't openly banish him, it became a bit of an issue. And one of the interesting things is that eventually he got a hold of a holocron of Frida Nad. And Frida Nad represented himself before Exar Kun when he went to his temple, his tomb. And here Frida Nad teaches him the dark side. But of course, Exar Kun believes that he's immune to Frida Nad's teachings. He believes that Frida Nad's force powers that he's teaching him are not going to corrupt him. They're not going to make him fall to the dark side. And he does actually rebuke Frida Nad that he'll just take his knowledge and use it for the Jedi. And that Frida Nad is ultimately not going to have a real apprentice. But Frida Nad just kind of tells him, oh, we'll see about that. And he tells the young Exar Kun to go to Korriban, where there he will be taught the full teachings of the Sith, the true meaning of what does it mean to be Sith. So, Exar Kun, ever full of himself, knowing that he can call upon the light side of the Force at any time, and he has resisted waves and waves of Force corruption from the dark side, he decides to do it. He goes to Korriban, and it's here that we see his transformation into the Dark Lord. Here we see him going around the tombs, and all of a sudden Frida Nad's spirit appears and causes a crash, a cataclysmic event, where all this rubble falls onto Exar Kun, and Exar Kun is unable to get himself up. He's trapped in the rubble. His bones are broken, his body is torn to shreds, he can't get the strength, he can't call upon the Force to free himself or to even heal. And it's here that we see all the Jedi feel his pain. The Jedi can feel him screaming through the Force that something is going on. And it's here Frida Nad's spirit appears before him and says, if you give in to the dark side, if you give in to my power, and I give it to you, it will make all this go away, and you will be completely healed. Which Exar Kun said yes. He finally gave in. The moment he does so, the transformation was not easy, and it wasn't painless. Instead, he was screaming through the cosmos as his bones were restructured, his body remorphed into physical shape, and all the rubble was blasted away. It was at this moment that Exar Kun realized something. He is unable to call upon the light side of the Force. He's unable to. He can try as much as he wants to do like Force heal or meditation. He just can't. So he finds that here he is, only able to call upon the dark side. He can easily channel lightning, but he was never really able to do that before. So now he's sitting here going, this is a little odd. Being given his last instructions, which is to amass an army to conquer the stars with, he goes to Yavin 4. Now Yavin 4 this time has the Massassi. The Massassi are a cousin species of the Sith, so very red-skinned, but they're a lot more hunched, more, I would say, aggressive, and they're also more vicious, but not just that, they're less intelligent. They're more shamanistic. They have a lot of crazy temples like Temple of Fire, and then they have all these alchemies that imbue their bodies and changes their very physical being into almost another species entirely. It's here, though, that Exar Kun is really tested if he is a Sith or not. Here he fights the Massassi and he tries not to call upon this power because he believes he's still a Jedi. He still believes he's resisting. But when the Massassi capture him and they're about to execute him, it is there he unleashes the full power that he's been given by Frida Nad, banishing and killing thousands of Massassi. It's here that the Massassi almost get wiped out, and it's here that they gather around him and worship him, because he is a Sith Lord. He is what they've been waiting for. And it's here that Exar Kun begins building temples, begins studying Sith alchemy, and it's here that's very interesting, because Frida Nad's spirit appears before him and tells him, we can now use this alchemy to give me flesh and blood yet again. This whole time, Frida Nad expected Exar Kun to help him restore his body. It was here that Exar Kun called upon the strengths of the dark side of the Force, now that he's given in and knows that he's a Sith and not a Jedi. and uses the dark side to forever banish Frida Nad's spirit from his presence. This is where he looks at the dark side and goes, the only way we can beat the Sith is to use the Sith teachings. And he uses this as a propaganda tool to draw many Jedi under his cause, where he says, look, I can get rid of the Sith by using their own power. If we use the light side, we'll be unable to get rid of the Sith. So the masters are teaching us wrong. And this attracts a lot of young Jedi to join him because it's a very sound argument. But lo and behold, as this is before the age of 2, the Sith Lords don't really have a restriction on how many apprentices they have. And they prefer having many, so that way their apprentices bicker and fight amongst each other. One of the fun things about this is that it turns out Frida Nad had many students during this time. Some of them even rulers of planets, upon which Exar Kun pushed himself to fight them, to face them in battle first. After all, why would you engage the Jedi, who are thousands and thousands of warriors, when first you should probably unify whatever's left of the Sith? And it's here that we see he fights and he starts to take over planet by planet with his Massassi forces, using ancient Sith holocrons, ancient Sith devices, and, more importantly, ancient Sith war machines. One of these war machines in particular was able to destroy Force-sensitive individuals on a planet, except it called for sacrifices, which the Massassi people were more than willing to sacrifice their life to feed into these war machines. Something else that Exar Kun was experimenting with was Sith alchemy, for he read how this alchemy was able to morph creatures into strong beings of the dark side. So he experiments on the head lead priest of the Massassi, the one who's about to execute him. And he finds that not only did he morph this Massassi into a tall, great, monstrous warrior, but now this monstrous warrior is even able to call upon the Force, whereas previously the priest couldn't. So now Exar Kun was really enticed to start doing this to his army, and he just started forcing all these Massassi to become into these tall warriors. And these warriors, learning a little bit of the Force, made them so much more deadly. Setting out across the stars was no real easy task. As stated, fighting the Republic versus fighting thousands of Jedi with just your small planet of tribal warriors was not really doable. So engaging with the Krath cults. The Krath cult at this time were a bunch of Sith worshippers of Frida Nad, and they were more or less his agents, his apprentices, and they had conquered a system, the Teton system. Here, Ulic Qel-Droma appears in our story. Ulic Qel-Droma briefly was a Jedi who went out to hunt evil monsters, fighting the Force, but he ended up falling to the dark side. Yada yada yada. Very short, sweet. Either way, this is where Ulic overthrows and kills the Krath cult, which is what they were called, and it's right this time that Exar Kun lands on the planet to conquer it, and he says that he is here for that reason. And it's here that Ulic Qel-Droma and Exar Kun clash. These are two people strong in the dark side of the Force who are both calling themselves Lords of the Sith. They have these Sith amulets on them that are causing waves of energies to swirl about them in their duel. They are going crazy. Magic swirling about them. The Force is giving manifest to the old Sith Empire in the background. People are gazing at awe at the visual display, when all of a sudden, the greatest Sith Lord who has ever been around, Marka Ragnos, appears, and he tells them to stop. And it's here he imbues two symbols on both of their foreheads. He tells them that they are Sith, and that they are true Lords of the Sith. He imbues Exar Kun's forehead with the image of the Dark Lord of the Sith, and he tells him that you will be the master. He looks at Ulic Qel-Droma and imbues on him the symbol of the Shadow Hand and tells him, you will be the apprentice, for one of you has power and the other desires it. And it's here that Ulic Qel-Droma and Exar Kun put away their rivalry, and they form the Brotherhood of Sith. The Brotherhood of Sith immediately went about attacking worlds like Ossus, claiming great Jedi relics and Sith holocrons that were hidden, seeking any knowledge they could. as well as taking in a bunch of Jedi apprentices, a bunch of Jedi who they would capture and just show this holocron. And Exar Kun had this grand committee of Jedi telling them about how, much as I said earlier, that he is able to banish the Sith with Sith teachings, and that they are able to do so only with the dark side. And he shows this holocron to everybody and says, gaze into this, and you will understand what I'm telling you is true. Smashing the holocron releases a bunch of dark wave energy that possesses all of the Jedi there. So now all the Jedi are possessed and immediately following Exar Kun's leadership to the dark side. Exar Kun leads an assault on his own. Here we see that Exar Kun and Ulic Qel-Droma were really good buddies. They were very friendly, very chummy with each other. Ulic was a little impatient and very hot-headed, with which Exar Kun kind of said, didn't your master ever teach you patience? Mine always did. So just kind of funny little banter between the two of them. But you could see Ulic was very determined to take over the Republic, very determined, whereas Exar Kun was kind of more focused on other things. He was kind of more focused on, yes, conquering areas, but he only desired so for knowledge. He only desired so for power. He didn't really care so much about the Republic as a whole. And it's here that Ulic gets himself captured. Upon Ulic getting himself captured, one of the new allies of Exar Kun approaches to him and tells him the bad news. Hey, it's I, Mandalore. That's right. They got the Mandalorians to work with them because they bested the Mandalore. And the Mandalore tells him, hey, Ulic's been captured on Coruscant because we failed our assault. It's here Exar Kun just sighs and goes, okay. Amass everybody, we're going to go attack Coruscant. Because already they've been at war with the Republic a few times, and they've been winning so far. But attacking Coruscant's a whole nother story. So it's here that we see Exar Kun breach into the goddamn Senate, and he actually sees the Grand Chancellor, and he decides to use the Force to take over his body and make him sort of a puppet. Make him say about how Ulic Qel-Droma should be admonished, that he's free to go, and that he is innocent of all charges. And then Ulic lets him go, which immediately kills the Chancellor. Because more often than not, these Sith powers are usually not pleasant. They usually strip the soul from someone's body. And here's where Ulic is leaving, and he enters into a duel with his brother and kills him. But Exar Kun encounters a very familiar person. His old master, Master Vodo. Master Vodo, still armed with his staff, just a stick. He challenges Exar Kun to a duel. And he tells him that if he loses, he'll be forced to be his apprentice again and abandon the way of the dark side. So the two duel, and it's here Exar Kun reveals what he is known for. This right here is what Exar Kun is known throughout all of history for. Exar Kun is fighting him, and he is just not gaining any ground. After years of study, he still is unable to beat his master with his staff. Until he activates the modification he's made to his lightsaber. It's a double-bladed lightsaber. The first time ever in history that we see a double-bladed lightsaber. This is why Darth Maul in the books of the Phantom Menace was so admonished, so adored by Palpatine. Because Palpatine looked at him and said, is that the legendary blade of Exar Kun? And it turns out Darth Maul had recreated it after centuries, no, thousands of years of no one being able to replicate the double-bladed design. But Exar Kun did it, and the moment he replicated and started aggressively wailing on his master knew he stood no chance. But he warned Exar Kun that, hey, if you beat me, I'm still going to appear before you when you really don't need me to, and I will beat you, using the light side of the Force. Upon which Exar Kun just dismisses him and says, just go to the Force, Master, and he strikes him down. After doing this stunt, Ulic Qel-Droma gets himself captured because he's so full of guilt for killing his own brother that he gets the Force sucked out of him by the Jedi. The Jedi say, nope, you don't get access to the Force anymore, and they strip it from him. Exar Kun is completely unaware of this, but all of a sudden his allies abandon him as a huge wave of Republic troops, huge wave of all the Jedi Order come descending down on his home of Yavin. understanding that he has no chance of winning this war, no chance of ever fucking winning it from the start. As I said, Exar Kun wasn't really more about conquest, he was more about just power. Exar Kun decided to reveal what he was really after. He invited all the Massassi into his temple, and he conducted a ritual where he imbued himself into a stone. And by imbuing himself into a stone, he was hoping that he could sacrifice thousands upon thousands and thousands of souls, and that way he can liberate his soul into an ethereal presence, so that way he can rule over the galaxy as a spirit. Well, the Jedi managed to get in time, and the Jedi conduct their own little ritual. They do their ritual where it strictly ties him to his temple. So while he won, Exar Kun freed his soul and he became an infinite Sith Lord spirit. He lost because the Jedi made it where there was a barrier that he could never leave his temple. So he was forever stuck. And it's here that we see a few years later, Ulic Qel-Droma revisits this place, mourning his loss, mourning how everything went wrong. And it's here that Exar Kun is screaming at him, Ulic, Ulic. And Ulic doesn't even seem fazed, upon which Exar Kun's saying all sorts of curses at him. I'll disembowel you. How dare you ignore me? And this is all your fault. Blah, blah, blah. Upon which he comes to realize that, well, Ulic has been cut off from the Force. He doesn't hear him at all. He doesn't even feel his presence. Ulic is pretty much a shell of himself. This is the end of Exar Kun. Now, his story does kind of go on in with Luke Skywalker, because Luke Skywalker, when he reinvents the Jedi Order, he reinvents it on Yavin 4, and one of his students does get possessed by Exar Kun, which requires Luke Skywalker to deal with it. But it's a very short moment, and one of the things I kind of don't like is just how many times people are kind of changing Exar Kun's story. Like Disney, for example, now makes it where just about a lot of Jedi have the double-bladed lightsaber thing. Which I do agree, like, this is such a good lightsaber form. How the hell was it lost to history, to time? Especially when Jedi have literally vaults of lightsabers. Like, how do you lose that design? But one of the big things with Exar Kun is that he's a good story of how he thought himself incorruptible, and he did believe in his Jedi Master, Vodo. Vodo was strict about, we must fight this dark side however we can. And Exar Kun viewed it that if you want to fight the dark side, you have to use the dark side's power. Because look, I was able to banish Frida Nad with it. Both of them are kind of on the same path of thinking, but obviously Exar Kun took it way too far. And what I find more interesting to note is that Exar Kun was only a Padawan. He was never a Jedi Knight. Now you may say, okay, how's that tie in anything? Well, go check out my Padawan video. My Padawan video explains it very well. That Padawans are not necessarily a low rank, and majority of people who graduate out of Padawan are usually like in their mid-20s or late 20s. Like, these are people who've been studying for a very, very long time, 20 years at least. So, very interesting to note, as we do see a lot of Sith Lords who do emerge from this era who are only Padawans. And that's not bashing a Padawan title, that's just saying that it's very fascinating to see this. And it's very understanding why. Is that they just don't have a good comprehension of the Jedi Order, they don't have a good comprehension of the Jedi Code. And this is what really led to Exar Kun's fall. Besides that, see you guys next time.